It's a great pleasure to welcome first to our virtual stage Nicole Pisani, founder, and Naomi Duncan, CEO of Chefs in Schools. As you've already heard, Chefs in Schools are the first beneficiary of the TFP Foundation. And we'd like to ask all of you to give a little, or indeed a lot, of what would have been your ticket price for the event to support the TFP Foundation and Chefs in Schools. But before we get on to all of that, let's find out more about Chefs in Schools. Nicole, Naomi, it's a huge pleasure to have you here today. Let's introduce everyone to Chefs in Schools.
It's such a pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much. We're really excited to be able to meet you all.
Brilliant, and thank you both. And firstly, do you want to explain to us all a little bit more about what is that Chefs in Schools does and why it matters and how it all started?
Definitely. So Chefs in Schools was formed about 2 years ago, and it came off the back of a lot of different conversations, but primarily thinking about how we can improve the health of children and looking at that in terms of school food and food education. I guess for us, we recognise that we can't fix everything with school food, but there are significant problems that exist out there in terms of diet-related disease, and in particular, obesity levels amongst children are out of control in the West and in poorest areas in our country. 1 in 3 children are leaving primary school obese at the moment. And as I said, you can't fix everything with school food, but you can make a really good start. And so that's what we do. We work to improve standards of food and food education in schools. And we do that across a kind of variety of settings. And we also campaign around issues relating to kind of feeding kids. Our kind of ethos and the bit that drives us is we want every child in the country, and then eventually obviously the world, to be eating and experiencing great food, innovative food, exciting food, but most importantly food that's good for them. And Nicole, I guess the backstory is yours.
Yes, I mean I've worked in restaurants for most of my life, and food, my family own restaurants, and food's always been quite key. It wasn't a matter of how much you ate, it was just part of the conversation throughout the day. And the relationship with food was really good from a very young age. So I answered a tweet by Henry Dimbleby, which was to be a school cook in his children's school in Hackney. And I said yes, primarily because I wanted a Monday to Friday, and I knew that schools didn't open on a weekend. So there was definitely no way that I'll get called in on a Sunday morning. And second of all, because as soon as I arrived at a school, I realized, how important it is to teach children about the relationship. It's not only what you serve in the dining hall, but it's about the conversation around food and making food, the center of a school, which, it is the heart. And yeah, that's really how the story started.
Can I ask, in your experience, what are the main barriers to good school food? It sounds like a really obvious thing, but there are clearly some barriers in place. So what are they? I
think it's a great question, and I would just say, in fairness, that there has been an enormous amount of progress in the last 20 years, and I would never want to take away from that. So a lot of barriers to good food have come down, but there still remains, there are key issues that we would like to get addressed in the long term, things like funding of school food. And for us, it all kind of comes back to this thing of the perception of school food. In this country, we have kind of, in many ways, a bit of a broken relationship with food. And our feeling is really strongly that we don't perceive food in schools to be something that is important. It's not considered to be a valuable profession for people to go into. It's not considered to be something, we accept and expect that school food is this kind of bland, beige, boring stuff, and that's all fine. So actually the single biggest barrier and the single biggest change, and the mission that we're kind of setting ourselves, is how to change that perception. School food is a vital intervention at a really young age that can change the child's relationship with food. It can nourish them in the immediate term, but it can also change their relationship with food for life. It can help their educational attainment. It can improve their behaviour. It's so important. And so I guess that would be the kind of barrier that I would say that we're most knocking hard at.
And also, I guess, giving it importance, like Ofsted. Ofsted when I was at school and there'd be an Ofsted supervisor coming in, and I would ask, are they going to have lunch? You know, so I think, you know, for it to be seen as important as education, I think would be key as well.
Right. I mean, it's just inspiring what you're doing. Could you perhaps give us an example of maybe one of the schools you've worked with and the challenges that you faced in that school, but also how you've managed to transform food and the culture within that school?
You go first.
Okay, I'm going to go first with my favourite, and I know Nicole has one as well. So if it's okay, we'll both share ours. I think my favourite is a school in Hornsey, a mid-sized primary school, who had a chef who'd worked there for sort of 20 odd years, who'd worked for various different kind of outsourced providers, had worked directly for the schools, and yet had become kind of quite stuck in a bit of a rut of doing the same things. And the school kind of approached us and said, look, we've got the chef, great guy, he's really kind of enthusiastic and passionate, but he doesn't know how to change things. He wants to make it better, but he doesn't know how to. And so we spent a kind of initial 2-week really intensive training period with him, and then provided kind of ongoing support. And the transformation and the turnaround in that food, in that school, was just incredible. We had the head teacher ringing us up, you know, kind of almost daily for the first few weeks. He's done it again, you know, you're not here. And I guess for me, I've worked in school food in all sorts of different guises, and to have a program that could be interventional and then sustainable, so that when at the point at which we kind of stepped away, you still had kids eating great food, they were learning about it, the school were beginning to be able to integrate the cooking and the growing of food in the gardens and things, and it was so wonderful. And here was this guy who was enthusiastic, he was as passionate about food as we were, but just didn't have the tools. And so to me, that's my favourite.
I kept on preparing for this question, and the amazing thing is I kept on changing schools, because I'm like, oh, that school, and oh, that school, which is, you know, leads me back to say, like, I think we are so proud, and we're actually so lucky. You know, if I look on Instagram, obviously my Instagram is just food, but all the schools, you know, at lunchtime come up back to back, and then there'll be a restaurant, and it's equal, you know, the food that they're serving these kids. You know, I was going to mention one of my great experiences was a school in Streatham. I now live just 10 minutes away, but we recruited the chef, and that chef found it really hard to go from the restaurant world to a school kitchen. So he took the job, and then 2-3 weeks later decided it wasn't for him. So we had to jump in and start doing shifts. So, you know, we were cooking, serving, you know, and we basically just literally had to go to a school, grab fish, throw it into the car and serve on that day. And now, you know, if you hear about what they're doing, they do this thing at lunchtime called a tasting plate, and they get, you know, free shellfish from our supplier, and they give kids like bowls of mussels to taste. And, you know, it's amazing that, you know, the impact and just the turnaround most of the time from a really bad situation, which is our favorite. But when things go really, really wrong, and then they end up being amazing, I think that we could safely say that those are our favorite ones.
I would agree with that.
That's fantastic. There's over the last few months, there's been a growing awareness of food poverty, in particular, helped a lot by Marcus Rashford's campaigning in recent months. Can you tell us a bit more about what your experience was during the pandemic, and what that highlighted, and how you've been supporting families since?
Definitely. And I think the kind of beginning of the pandemic was a bit of a kind of crystallizing moment for us, because we've always focused our work in areas with high levels of socioeconomic deprivation, because you go where the need is the greatest, and that's how you have the biggest impact. And so I think for us, the minute that we heard that schools were going to close, we knew that there were going to be so many kids, sometimes up to 40-50% of the school, who were entitled to a free school meal and wouldn't be able to access it anymore. For us, every day, making that free school meal kind of great and nutritious is part of the deal. And so as soon as schools shut, we kind of sat down and had the conversation of, well, how do we keep that going? How do we keep food going to these, not only the kids, but also thinking, you know, these are exactly the kinds of families who are then going to be immediately at the kind of immediate risk of the economic crunch. So we sort of reinvented ourselves overnight, as I think many businesses, and I'm sure lots of people tuning into the event today would have had the same experience, the magic pivoting word, we all did it.
Yeah.
So that's what we did, and for a period of the entirety of lockdown, we were creating kind of weekly hampers, which included fresh, ready-made meals. It included kind of, we had it as, you know, food that was nutritional but kind of accessible. It was, you know, potatoes and rice and eggs and vegetables and fruit and things that we knew that kids would eat that could be prepared reasonably easy, but also fresh meals. Yeah. And I think outside of that, the second bit that we were doing alongside was campaigning really hard to make sure that funding was in place for that. From the very beginning, nothing was in place nationally. And so we were part of a group of 20 organisations campaigning really hard. Marcus Rashford has been, you know, godsend with his kind of his profile and the impetus that it's put behind that. But I think it's just brought home to us even more. You know, it's the value of a school meal goes so far beyond what we think of it, and it's just another great reason why we should value it even more. For some kids in schools, it's their only meal. It's not, you know, it's not their only hot meal, and it's not, you know, it's not just a nice to have. For some kids, it's their only meal. We have to get it right.
And also in the holidays, I guess this is what now Chefs in Schools, you know, every half term or Christmas, we're getting asked by schools straight away, like, what are you doing? Like, how can we? And schools and restaurants equally, you know, we had so many restaurants in half term come up to us and just say, we're near the school, how can we give them food? So I do think now, since, you know, the summer, we've now started the conversation around how we can feed kids 24/7 rather than just in school term.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right. I mean, it's something that's very dear to our hearts, and I've been very aware of that. It's those at the bottom of society in terms of economic and things, that actually the holidays are actually the massive challenge for these families. And as you rightly say, these children, therefore, is an economic burden, and also they tend to go without, and parents not eating in order to support their children.
The kids.
Yeah,
we're really excited that some of the National Food Strategy recommendations, which included the recommendation around holiday and activities funding being provided outside of term time, that's a huge win. We're really excited to see that implemented. Yeah. We'll be working on kind of how we can help provide some of those programs, but there's a lot further to go. At the moment, half of the children who should be entitled to a free school meal, who live in technical poverty in this country, aren't currently entitled. So another part of the work that we're doing is really pushing really hard to have that changed.
So I suppose the key thing is, you know, what are the two things that you'd like to get across to us all? And probably actually much more importantly is, what can we do? Yeah, how can we help? How can we support? How can we make a difference?
So I think for me, the biggest takeaway that I would want everybody to leave with is a realization and an appreciation of quite how important school food is and quite how influential it can be. We have to change the perception of school food that we have. I would love to see more kind of foodie people getting really involved in school food, working alongside caterers, working alongside in-house schools, local authorities, to kind of re-inject that passion and that enthusiasm for food. There are issues that need tackling around funding, and I accept that, and it's other things, but the big takeaway I would say is the perception of how school food is something that is really important. And I guess from a point of view of what people can do to help, always a good idea, visit our website, www.chefsinschools.org.uk. We have a continuous campaigning page there which highlights all of the current campaigns that people can get involved in. At the moment, we're pushing, as I said, for the National Food Strategy made 3 recommendations around children's food. They haven't all been implemented yet. Only 1.5 of them have. So we'll have petitions and the kind of the latest campaigning that we're doing up on there. So I would definitely recommend doing that.
And I guess just ask the question, you know, all the mothers who, you know, their kids come and ask them for a packed lunch, like, just to continue the conversation, like, what are we feeding our kids at school? You know, can it be any better? And it's not only, I mean, obviously the packed lunch conversation, you know, if a child's friend is having a packed lunch, then I guess they would go home and ask for a packed lunch. But it is, you know, just making sure that we're feeding our kids properly. You know, we're so obsessed about food 24/7 that it's crazy that, you know, we're not obsessed about school food.
Definitely. And I think Nicole and I talked about this a lot, and I think one of the things that we feel really strong, you know, there's a lot of good school food. you know, we've seen it with our own eyes, but there are also a lot of places where it just needs that investment, and that investment has to come from the schools getting really as excited and as passionate about food, because it is so important.
No, definitely.
We've set ourselves a really ambitious target based off the level of connection that we feel with chefs in schools, where our first target is to raise £50,000 initially. Can you just give the audience and everyone watching today, what would that do?
So for us, £50,000 would be an investment in a new chef trainer. So we have 3 fantastic chef trainers who currently work with us. They're an amazing team. They work for Nicole.
Yes.
Nicole, do you want to explain what the chef trainers do?
I didn't know we're going to get another chef trainer, but you know, we can definitely do another chef trainer. Yes, our chef trainers go around. I guess what we love with what we do is that when a school starts to work with us, the relationship remains, you know, throughout the schools, well, throughout the chef's career. And I guess the chef trainers are constantly making sure that school has everything they need. The staff within the school are also trained. It's not just about us, you know, recruiting someone. It's making sure that the whole team come along the journey. And that means, you know, doing team building sessions. You know, we do bread classes. We go around schools just making sure that the training is done for the team. And just, yeah, I guess it's making sure once again that kids are getting fed well. We started, quite a lot of our schools are doing gardens as well, so our chef trainers help set those up. Snack shacks in the playground, smoking wardrobes in the.
You should clarify for smoking food.
Smoking food, not yes. So yeah, the chef trainers are quite busy. I mean, they're doing videos of cooking whole veg as we speak currently. So they're training in a school in King's Cross on how to cook veg whole and not to waste anything. So they're cooking the stalks and the leaves. Anyway, I'm going back to training food, but definitely a chef trainer. I didn't know it was possible, but we definitely could do with another chef trainer.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that got us really excited about the chef trainer and almost putting a financial target on that is that our understanding and hope is that means that you can roll out to more schools, touch more children, more schools, and that's why we've set that ambitious target. So
and yeah, we'll go nationwide if we get another chef trainer, which we forgot to say. I mean, we'll start off nationwide and hopefully end up in Singapore at some point soon.
Nicole and Naomi, thank you so much for opening the summit today. I hope the audience feel as inspired and as compelled to get involved and to support as we do. And our ask is to everybody in the audience today, please do give as generously as you possibly can. The links are now being shared in the comment threads in the various social channels within which you're watching today's live broadcast. So if you can, please give even a small proportion of what would have been your ticket price to attend the event today. And if you're in a position where you can't give, please do share and comment and like anything around the Food People Foundation and Chefs in Schools. And I think on behalf of us all at the Food People, Wayne and I, thank you so much in advance for your support.
Thank you very
so
much. Thank you.
Thank you.